Maniac Magee, Chapter 41. The McNabb boys didn't know whom they did expect Maniac to bring to the party, but one thing for sure, they did not expect him to come walking through the front door with a black kid. And that was only half of it. From the way the kid swaggered in, from the candy bar that jutted like a chocolate stogie from the corner of his mouth, from the ripstone evil scowl on his face, the kid had to be none other than Marsbar Thompson himself. If black meant bad, if black meant in-your-face nastiness, if black meant as far from white as you could get, then Marsbar Thompson was the blackest of the black. Here. In the middle of their living room. Stopping the party, the neighborhood kids, the Cobras, even George McNabb, stopping them dead as traffic. Just walked in through the front door, the steel door, breezed right on in, past the bars, standing there, I own this jointing there. Before they knew what was happening, before anyone could reach for anything. Which, of course, is just what Maniac had in mind. Remembering how little Grayson had known about black people in black homes, thinking of the McNabbs' wrong-headed notions, thinking of Marsbar's knee-jerk reaction to anyone wearing a white skin, and thinking, naturally, what else would you expect? Whites never go inside blacks' homes, much less inside their thoughts and feelings, and blacks are just as ignorant of whites. What white kid could hate blacks after spending 5 minutes in the Beals house? And what black kid could hate whites after answering Mrs. Pickwell's dinner whistle? But the East Enders stayed in the East End, and the West Enders stayed in the West. And the less they knew about each other, the more they invented. It hadn't been easy. Finding Marsbar, taking all his lip about cheating on the race, taking some bumps, some shoves, Mars goading him to fight, but keeping his own cool, matching Marsbar's glare for glare. Telling him he wasn't as bad as he thought he was. Really stoking him now, making him slam his candy bar to the ground. No? You want to tell me why I ain't so bad, fish? Go ahead, for I waste ya. Chest to chest. Keeping cool, letting Mars do all the huffing. Simple. You don't cross Hector, you stay over here where it's safe. How bad would you be over there? Stepping back then, folding his arms, smugging it up just enough, standing there in his white skin, gazing nonchalantly about, 6 blocks deep in the heart of the black side. Guess that makes me badder than you. They did not go straight to the McNabbs. First they went to the Pickwells. Maniac wanted Marsbar to see the best the West End had to offer. The little Pickwells made as much fuss over Marsbar as over Maniac. They believed, as did all little kids in the West End, that he carried 100 Marsbars with him at all times. Not surprisingly, Mrs. Pickwell never batted an eye when she saw who was coming to dinner. It was quite a sight, all right. 16 Pickwells plus Maniac plus a down-and-out golf caddy, 18 so-called white faces, and Marsbar Thompson. To his credit, Marsbar didn't use the words fishbelly or honky once, though on one occasion he did bend the truth a mite. When the Pickwell kid asked him if it was true about the famous race in April, did Maniac really beat him going backward? Marsbar studied his fork for a minute and said, "Yeah, he went backward, but you got the story wrong. Wasn't me he beat, was my brother Milky Way." The little kids couldn't understand why the grown-ups laughed for 5 minutes after that. As for Marsbar himself, his expression never changed until the dinner was almost over, when the littlest non-baby Pickwell, Dolly, called him Mr. Barr, and even then it wasn't so much a smile as a crack in the glare. Even if Marsbar wasn't letting on, Maniac could tell he was pleased to learn his fame had spread to the West. When they left, half the Pickwell kids followed them, begging Mars to perform his legendary feat of stopping traffic. "Don't," Maniac warned. "It might not work over here." But the Pickwells persisted, and when they reached Marshall Street, Marsbar commanded, "Stay here," and stepped into the traffic. Not only did he shamble, jive, shuck, and hip-doodle at his own sweet pace, he did something he had never done in the East End. He came to a complete and utter halt halfway across and let nothing but the evil in his eyes take care of the rest. He stood like that for 1 full minute. By the time he finally moved to the far side, so the legend goes, 23 cars, several bicycles, and a bus were stacked to a dead stop in both directions. Maniac hurried across while the Pickwells stood at the curb, cheering and waving goodbye. But no one was cheering now in Fort McNab, and Maniac knew that despite the swagger and the scowl and the chocolate stogie, Marsbar was one uneasy dude. Chapter 42. George McNab was the first to speak up. He was stretched out on the only new piece of furniture in the house, a tilt-back lounge chair. Said McNab, "What's he doing here?" The awkward silence that followed was mercifully broken by Piper, tugging on Maniac's arm. "Where's my birthday present? What'd you get me?" Maniac pulled the present from his pocket. Piper exclaimed, "A watch!" "No," said Maniac, "a compass. It tells you which direction you're going." "Like the ocean?" asked Russell. "The ocean, Mexico, anywhere in the world, only one thing." "What's that?" Maniac took the compass from Piper's hand. "I'm keeping it till school's over. If you go every day, both of you, then you can have it back and sail around the world." "Our little raft!" Piper cheered. "Is it a deal?" Piper and Russell and Maniac did a three-way high five. "It's a deal." George McNab pulled himself up from the easy chair and shuffled into the kitchen. He wore bare-backed slippers over his bare feet. His white ankles were dirty. He took a beer can from the fridge and headed for the steps. "Let me know when it leaves," he said, and went upstairs. Maniac could feel the voltage that surged through Marsbar and crackled black lightning from his eyes. Quickly he clapped his hands. "Hey! Isn't this a party? Where's the games?" So they played games. Silly games whose main object seemed to be shrieking and screaming. Marsbar allowed himself to be dragged into them, but his jaw was clenched and his eyes kept straying to the gaping hole in the ceiling, and to the cobras, who were slouching against the walls and baseboards, sipping beers and watching his every move. None of them had spoken since Mars and Maniac walked in. Of course, as far as the little kids were concerned, the highlight of the whole party was not the birthday boy, Piper McNab, but the McNab's new pillbox. They found every excuse to stay inside it. They fought over space at the narrow gunnery slots. When Marsbar whispered to Maniac, "What is that?" Maniac said it was a bomb shelter. Then Russell called, "Let's play Rebels! White's in the pillbox, black's outside!" A cheer went up, and a dozen kids stampeded into the pillbox. Their gabble circled the cinder block walls and popped from the gunnery slots. "I'm gonna be white! I'm white! Me too! Too many in here, we need more blacks! Not me! Not me! We ain't got enough guns! Only the ones with the guns are in! The rest of you gotta get out! You're black! Give me a gun! I had it first! Come on, you meatballs! Blacks is the best part! You get to charge! Yeah, we get to lose! Look, you can use beer cans for grenades. You can lob grenades. Then you do it. Well, somebody gotta be black, else we ain't playing. I'm counting. Time I hit 10, I want to see 5 of you out here. 1, Russell counted. No one came out. Not at 9, not at 10, not after 10. Maniac and Marsbar stared in silence at the gunnery slots where wide open eyes began to appear, one pair atop another. The 3 words that Marsbar sneered, the joke that he spat out, "Yeah, bomb shelter," did not even have the moment to themselves, for just then another word, "Geronimo!" came plunging from the sky and landed with a floor-jarring, heart-stopping crash directly behind him. A cobra had jumped from the hole, a fat, red-haired cobra who was now rolling on the floor and laughing so hard, as were all the cobras, that his face matched the color of his hair. You see him jump? I never see his face. Somebody check out his pants, check out his drawers. Oh man, oh. Maniac had to wrap Marsbar in a bear hug to keep him from charging the fat red roller. The laughter stopped as if cut by scissors. The cobras were standing. John McNab sauntered forward. "You got a problem, Sonny?" "That wasn't funny, John," said Maniac. "You could have been hurt." McNab kept his eyes on Marsbar. "I ain't talking to you, Magee. I'm talking to Sonny here. Don't you like our parties, Sonny boy?" Marsbar strained against Maniac's arms. "You ain't got to worry about me coming to no more of your parties, Fishbelly. And you ain't got to worry about me invading this place. Anybody come to a block away, They faint from the smell. McNabb advanced. Maniac shouted, "John, you owe me one. I brought the boys back." McNabb took another step, then stayed. The cobras stayed, and Maniac, clamping the struggling Marsbar for dear life, lugged him down a gauntlet of seething eyes to the door and out to the street. Marsbar retched free and stomped on ahead. Maniac followed. It was almost dark. High above the streetlights were buzzing, one by one. After several blocks, Marsbar wheeled. "You suckered me. You softened me up with them pick peoples and then bring me here? What'd you think? I was gonna cry? Okay, I come over. I did it. It's done. And don't you be coming around no more, you hear me, fish? 'Cause you ain't only seen me half bad yet." He turned and headed due east. Maniac walked another way. It was a good question. What had he thought? What had he expected? A miracle? Well, come to think of it, maybe one had happened. While he was looking for one miracle, maybe another had snuck up on him. It happened as he was clamping and lugging Marsbar down the gauntlet of cobras, trying to keep him alive. And what was Marsbar doing? Fighting him. Maniac straining to get loose and bust some cobras. Outnumbered, outweighed, but not outhearted. That's when Maniac felt it. Pride. For this East End warrior whom Maniac could feel trembling in his arms. Scared, as any normal kid would be, but not showing it to them. Yeah, you're bad all right, Marsbar. You're more than bad. You're good. Maniac stopped. He'd been walking in circles. It was dark. He turned one way, then another. From the briefest moment, thinking to go home. Thinking it's time to go home now. Then remembering that once again, he had no home to go to. Chapter 43. He slept in the park that night, and for the next dozen or so, sometimes in the buffalo shed, sometimes the bandshell benches or the pavilion. The nights were warm now. June was on the way. He ate when and where he could. For apples and carrots and day-old hamburger buns, you couldn't beat the deer and buffalo pens. A new Acme had opened, and the bakery section always had a tray of free samples sitting on the counter. And then there were always the Pickwells. It may have been an illusion, but it seemed that the hungrier he got, the farther Mrs. Pickwell's whistle traveled. Some dinner times, there was hardly a spot in town from which he could not hear it. He read in the library. He joined pickup games in the park, baseball, basketball. School was letting out. There were more kids. Mornings were the best. He would rise with the sun's color, before the sun itself, before the bison, and set out. He came to think of these apple-skin hours as his special time with the town. There was not a street or alleyway or house or stone, not even a garage that he did not recognize. His footsteps fell everywhere but on the bridge over the Schuylkill, his eyes everywhere but on the P&W trolley trestle. And the people, most of them he did not know by name or face, yet they revealed themselves to him even as they slept. He knew them by their windows and cars and porches and toys they left outside, but most of all he knew them by their backyards. Flowers, weeds, junk, pet houses, tree houses, vegetable gardens, rubber tires, grass ranging from desert sparse to shaggy to trim as a Marine's haircut. The backyards were as different, as individual, as faces. East End and West End, black and white, would begin only when the alarm clocks rang. For now, before sunrise, there were no divisions, no barriers. There were only the people, the families, the town. His town. As much his town as anyone's. He knew he could be sleeping right then, in the Beals' house or the Pickwells or even the McNabbs. But beyond that, for a few enchanted moments each newborn morning, he believed there was not a single home in Two Mills, not a single one that would not happily welcome him to enter and go upstairs and curl up between its sleepers. Maybe that's why he left his bandshell bench late one night in mid-June and went to someone's backyard on Hamilton Street, someone whose leaf lettuce he had watched growing, and quietly opened the gate and closed it behind him, and laid himself down on a white wicker love seat on the back porch. From then on, he slept in a different backyard or back porch every night. Once, finding the back door unlocked, he slept in a kitchen. Chapter 44. One morning in early July, cruising down the Appleskin Hour, Maniac thought he heard footsteps other than his own. He stopped. Only the vast quietness responded. It happened a few more times. Must be his own footfalls echoing down the row house canyons. 2 days later, passing an alley, he thought something moved at the other end, and once, turning onto a broad street, he had the feeling, more sense than sight, that something had just flashed around a corner 2 blocks away. When these odd sensations continued for another morning or two, Maniac knew he was not alone. So he was not totally surprised when a few mornings later he turned a corner and ran smack into another early hour cruiser. No, it wasn't the what that surprised him. It was the who. Mars Bar Thompson. They quickly bounced off each other and went their separate ways. Neither paused, neither said a word. This was the first in a series of apparently random mergings. Intersections, alleyways, one never knew where he would come upon the other. Sometimes they found themselves running the same route, only a block apart. On one occasion, they trotted down the same street at the same time in the same direction but on opposite sides of the street. Then one day, as it happened, they each turned a particular corner at the same moment and headed off in the same direction, side by side. Still, neither spoke. Not even their eyes met. They jogged silently for a block, then veered apart. The next time they dovetailed. They stayed that way for 2 blocks, then 3 blocks, and so on. No words, no looks, just the rhythmic slapping of their sneaker soles upon the sidewalk and the pulsing duet of their breathings. Stride for stride, shoulder to shoulder, breath for breath, till they were matching on all points, a harnessed pair, 2 runners becoming one. Morning after morning it happened this way, the 2 of them dovetailing at an intersection, and without the slightest hitch in stride cruising off together. Though each face showed no awareness of the other, they were in fact minutely sensitive to each other. If Mars Bar cranked up the pace just a notch, Maniac would pick it up within a stride. If Maniac inched ahead, Mars Bar was there. If one veered to the left or right, the other followed like a shadow. One day one was the leader, the next day the other. One day Mars Bar would lead Maniac down the river, down the tracks, past the railroad gondolas, each with its mountain of coal, to the rolling mill at the steel plant where his father worked. Another day, Maniac would head for the townships to the north and west, the farmlands of the country, where the dew sparkled on spider webs and nature was doing such fresh and wonderful things that you could almost hear the long, neat congregations of corn clapping, "Amen and Amen." When the working people began leaving their houses, the daybreak boys diverged, Mars Bar to the east end, Maniac to wherever. A week passed, a second week. Morning after morning, stride for stride, breath by breath, never a word, never a glance, each believing the other simply happened to be going where he was going. They were cruising Main Street one morning, passing the Grand Movie Theater, when Piper McNabb came screaming down the middle of the empty street. He was wild-eyed and crying and soaking wet. His feet were slathered in coal-black mud. He shrieked and babbled at them, but he made no sense, so they just followed as he raced frantically back up the street. As they ran, the belch-like toot of a whistle grew louder and louder. He led them to the corner of Main and Swede, to where the platform of the P&W trolley terminal hung high above the sidewalk. He burst into the terminal building and up the steps. In a moment, Maniac and Mars Bar were on the platform, gasping and following Piper's pointing finger down the tracks. What they saw pulled the fragments of Piper's babble together. The boys had been playing bombs away. Piper's part was to sail the raft down the river. Russell's part was to wait on the trolley trestle that spanned the river, and when Piper passed underneath, bomb away from a bucket full of rocks. Everything went as planned, unless you count Russell's failing to sink the raft, and Piper's practically drowning trying to beach it, until Piper returned to the terminal to find Russell still out on the trestle. Apparently, without the target below to focus on, Russell had suddenly discovered how high he was. One false step, and he could slip right between the ties to the river. And that's where Russell was now. Out on the middle of the trestle, high over the water, frozen in terror, not even a railing to cling to, responding neither to Piper's cries nor to the red and yellow P&W trolley, which also occupied the trestle, idling and tooting about 20 feet away. Piper pulled at Maniac. "Save him! Save him!" Marsbar stared with growing astonishment at Maniac, whose wide, unblinking eyes were fixed on the trestle, yet somehow did not seem to register what was there, nor did he seem to hear Piper pleading. With the drenched, mud-footed kid clawing at him, he turned without a word, without a gesture, and left the platform and went downstairs. Shortly, he appeared on the sidewalk below. He crossed Main and continued walking slowly up Swede, Piper screaming after him from the end of the platform. Chapter 45. "Magee! Magee!" Maniac's first groggled thought was that it was the buffalo calling to him. Then he thought, it's the superintendent. He's discovered me and he's come to kick me out. He propped himself on his elbow, swatted a straw from his ear, and gave a better listen. "Magee! Magee!" Marsbar. It was the second night following the morning at the trestle. Maniac had been asleep in the buffalo lean-to. He stood. "Magee!" "Where are you?" "Here, over here." He headed toward the voice over the hoof-chopped earth. The moon was full. He could see Marsbar's dark form against the fence. Then he could see his eyes. "What are you doing here?" "I've been looking for you. I heard you hung out here." "Where'd you hear that?" "Amanda Beale. You really sleep here, man?" "What do you mean?" "Where's the buffaloes? I can't even see them." "They're sleeping, like every other person that's got sense. What are you doing out here at this time of night?" "I snuck out. I'm not there when they wake up. They'll figure out I'm running, like usual." "Ain't you afraid in there?" "No." Both fell silent. Cricket talk and fireflies held the night. "Magee?" "Yeah?" "I gotta ask you something." "Go ahead." Why didn't you go after that kid? Why'd you go away?" Maniac didn't answer. "Listen, man, I know you wasn't scared. I know it, so I had to come ask you." Maniac's voice came faintly. "Is he okay?" "I asked you first." Maniac drew a long breath. "You want to come in?" Marsbar laughed. "You kidding? Ain't no buffalo gonna eat this dude." "They don't eat people. You come out here, man." Maniac climbed the fence. He started to walk. Marsbar walked with him. Maniac told him the story of his parents' death. He told about his problem with the trestle, how he had learned to avoid it. And then, all of a sudden, there I was on the platform, looking out at it, closer to it than I ever was before, up on the same level. I always saw it from below before. Now I was up there, too, where they were, looking down, and it was more real than ever. The nightmare was worse than ever. I saw the trolley coming. I saw it falling. Them. They walked in silence past the silo-shaped cage of the broken-winged golden eagle. Marsbar swallowed hard. His voice was hoarse. I knew you wasn't scared." Maniac sniffed. "I don't remember much. Next thing I knew, I was somewhere on Swede Street." "Somebody came down the East End like you did, all by hisself, a fish belly, get all up in my face?" He rippled, a stick along the deer pen fence. "I knew scared wasn't it." "So," said Maniac. "What happened?" Marsbar laughed, wagged his head. "Happened? Man, I still don't believe it. That little honky, he looks at me, with his crybaby face, and says, 'Okay, can I go out and get his brother?' I look around like, is somebody else here? I says to him, 'Who you talking to, me?' I'm just pulling his chain, 'cause there he was hollering for you up the street, and there I am standing right alongside the damn stupid white potato. Understand what I'm saying?" Maniac nodded, and out of the darkness came the strangest sound, a kind of amplified gulp. Marsbar jumped. "What's that?" "Emu," said Maniac. There, behind the nearest fence, loomed a tall, thin neck topped by a small head. What?" "Emu. Second largest bird in the world after the ostrich. They're from Australia." "I don't remember studying about no emu. You buddies with all these dudes." "No, just the buffalo. So go ahead, what happened? What happened? Marsbar snorted. What happened was, I went out and rescued the dumb fish. Like to get myself killed. Maniac touched Marsbar's arm. He's okay? Marsbar snickered. Yeah, he okay, but that ain't the main part. The main part is how he was all grabbing onto me, coming off them tracks, shaking, shivering, hugging, like he wanted to climb inside of me. I was afraid. He shook his head and giggled. Afraid the fish belly was going to kiss me. They laughed. Maniac tried to picture it, the two of them making their way across the trestle, tie by tie, arms wrapped around each other. And even that ain't the mainest part, said Marsbar, his voice rising in wonder. Even when we got off, the little guy wouldn't let me go. We're off it, I says to him. You're rescued. But all he does is grab me harder like he's an octopus or something. Off the platform, down the steps, out to the street, he's still doing it. I couldn't pry him off, no how. So, said Maniac, what did you do? What'd I do? I took him home. Maniac stopped dead. What? Marsbar shrugged. I figured let my mom pry him off me. Of course, the other one had to come too, but I made him leave them muddy sneakers outside. He put his nose to a fence. What's in there? I don't see nothing. Prairie Dog Town. They're underground. So what then? So my mother took over. She pried the one off of me, and soon she does, he jumps right onto her, like an octopus. I go to pull him off, and she gets all mad at me and says, let him go, let him go. She gets the wet one dried off, takes off his clothes and puts my old stuff on him. Stuff she been saving, 'cause I get a little brother someday. But I won't, 'cause my mom can't have no babies no more. And I ain't even come to the craziest part yet. What's that? They didn't want to go home. They stayed all day. My mother babying them, feeding them. I tell her not to. She swats me away. Sometimes my mom ain't got no sense. She makes me play games with them, Monopoly and stuff. Finally, my father drives them home. It's after dark. They're getting out of the car, and know what they say to me? I'm in the car, too. He wagged his head. They asked me to come in and play that game of theirs, Rebels. They, beg me. They say, come on, please. If you play with us, we'll let you be white. You believe that? Maniac chuckled. I believe it. They walked on. Magee. Yeah. I'd ask you something. Now I gotta tell you something. What's that? You smell like a buffalo. Ears of 100 different shapes pricked up at the sound of the long, loud laughter of the boys. Magee, Marsbar said after a spell. Yeah? My mother wants to ask you something too. Your mother? Yeah, like I told you about, Actually, she already heard about you. So? She wants to know, why you don't come to our house. Maniac turned, stared directly at Marsbar. Marsbar looked away. He said nothing more. They walked on, silent among the crickets and fireflies. Having made a full circle of the zoo, they were back at the pen and the American bison. Maniac said, I can't. Why not? Said Marsbar. My house not good enough? My mother? Maniac struggled for words. I didn't say I didn't want to. It's just, I don't know, things happen. I can't. Look, man, Marsbar snapped. Ain't nobody saying come live with us. All she's saying is, you want to come for a little, visit? You want to? Well, come on, you can. That's all. Don't go making no big thing, man. Ain't no big thing. Maniac shuddered. He turned his eyes to the sky, beyond the flickering fireflies, to the stars. If there were answers, they were as far away as the constellations. I gotta go, he said, and before Marsbar could react, he was over the fence and hurrying for the lean-to. Chapter 46. The teeth of the buffalo clamped firmly upon his ear and lifted his head up from the straw, up from sleep. Marsbar was right. They do eat people. The buffalo did more than bring great pain to his ear. It spoke to him. Ain't you nice? Ain't you nice? But the voice of the buffalo was the voice of Amanda Beale, and its teeth were her fingers pulling and wrenching his poor ear till he was sitting upright. See that? She snapped, and scrambled his brains with a smack to the head. He'd rather she pulled his ear. There you go, making me say ain't. I have not said that word all year long, and now you go making me so mad. She snatched a handful of straw and flung it at him. I'm sorry, he said. He wondered if he would have better luck sleeping in the emu pen. Can I ask a question? Make it quick, she growled. Except for making you say ain't, what is it I'm saying I'm sorry for? What? She screeched. She was standing above him, hands on hips. He didn't need the light of day to feel the look on her face. You're sorry for a whole mess of things, boy. You're sorry because you didn't accept Snicker's invitation to his house. And you're sorry because he came throwing a ball up against my bedroom window, waking me up and telling me I had to get up out of my bed and sneak out of my house in the middle of the night and come out here and do something about all this. That's why you are sorry, boy. Maniac yawned. Snickers? That's what I'm changing his name to. How bad can you act if everybody's calling you? She said it loud. Snickers. A voice came rasping from the fence. Shut up, girl. Maniac howled with laughter. It struck him that it had been a long time since he had reared back like this, so he couldn't just let the laughter carry on as long as it wanted. When he finally settled down, Amanda said, Okay, let's go. Huh? Said Maniac. Let's go. Where? Home. Whose? Mine, yours, ours. Come on, I'm sleepy. Oh no. Maniac opened his mouth to speak, to protest, to explain. But there was too much. 100 nights would not be long enough to explain, to make her understand, so he simply said, I can't, and lay back down. In an instant he was bolt upright again, yanked by a hand he couldn't believe belonged to a girl. Don't tell me can't. I didn't come all the way out here in my nightshirt and my slippers and climb that fence and almost kill myself so I could hear you tell me can't. She was yelling. Several pens away, Prairie Dog Town stirred. Heads popped into the moonlight. You got it all wrong, Buster. You ain't got... Oh, see? She kicked him. You do not have a choice. I am not asking you. I'm telling you. You are coming home with me, and you are going to sleep in my room, which is going to be your room. And I don't care if you sleep on the floor or the windowsill or what, but you are going to sleep there and not here. Are you going to sleep there tonight? And tomorrow night? And the night after that, and the night after that, and every night, except maybe once in a while if you decide to sleep over at Snicker's house, if he ever asks you again? This is not your home. Now move. She jerked him to his feet. Applause and a brief whistle came from the fence. Amanda led him by the hand across the muddy, lumpy earth. Boost me, she commanded at the fence. He boosted her. Marsbar helped her down from the other side. Maniac hesitated, then climbed over himself. They walked through the zoo and down through the boulevard, the three of them, Amanda and Marsbar, Snickers, and Maniac. Amanda grumbling all the way. You're more trouble outside the house than in it. Now I'm gonna have to throw these slippers away. There's probably buffalo poop all over them, and you better not come within 10 feet of me, boy, till you get a bath. Maniac said nothing. He was quite content to let Amanda do the talking, for he knew that behind her grumbling was all that he had ever wanted. He knew that finally, truly, at long last, someone was calling him home. The end.